Hello and welcome to Really Cool People, a podcast produced by Schweitzer Church. I'm your host, Jason Leininger. This is a place to hear stories of really cool people. And the hope is that as you and I listen, we'll be inspired, encouraged, and challenged through moments of serendipity. In a sermon entitled The Weight of Glory, C.S. Lewis said, "There is no ordinary person. You and I have never talked to a mere mortal. It's my joy over the next few moments to introduce you to somebody who may seem somewhat ordinary, especially to themselves, and yet they're a really cool person. Today, we're going to meet Judy Thompson. And Judy was born and raised in Springfield. She graduated from Parkview High School and then Drury University. And for many years, she worked at Drury University and was the director of, she was a vice president and was director of their development. She got to retire from Drury 5 different times. Well, she's going to talk about her life. She's going to talk about things personal and professional. And she's got some great insight about all aspects of life that she'll share. So thanks for joining us. Tune in and listen to Judy Thompson. Well, Judy, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And let's start with your story.
Okay. Well, I was born in Springfield, Missouri. My dad was with Standard Oil, which is now BP, British Petroleum. He was in sales and went up in the company. He was moved to St. Louis to be manager of quite a larger area, but he didn't want his family to be in the wicked city. So we stayed here, and Daddy had a little apartment in the DeSoto Hotel in St. Louis. And we occasionally would get to go up, and I would get to miss school for a week, but he came home most weekends. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I had one brother, Bill, who just passed, actually, in his sleep.
Okay.
About 2 months ago. Been major shock for me because we were very close. I was 5 years older.
Okay.
And I had sent him, actually, his birthday is April 15th. And so on the 14th, I sent him a text and I said, 80 years ago, a darling, emphasis on darling, 5-year-old, lived in joy and happiness. Little did she know what was going to happen to her the next day. And then I went on and said, I don't remember how I felt then, but I know how I feel now. I'm so happy to have you as a brother and treasure your birthday and hope we have many more. Well, of course, we didn't get to have many more because he was just 80 this past April. Bill was a big athlete at Parkview High School. I was in the first graduating class of Parkview High School. And I went to Drury over my father's objections. I wanted to go away to school. And I had several things at universities in mind, but my mother was quite ill. And Daddy said, I just can't handle having your mother in Barnes Hospital and you going away to school. So stay here for 1 year, and then you can go anywhere you want to. In his mind, staying here for 1 year meant SMS, which is what it was then, Missouri State now. I decided to go to Drury, and he wasn't real thrilled about that. But after 1 year, I didn't want to leave. I loved Drury. So I graduated from Drury. And then I had the opportunity to go to Europe and go to school. Mary Elizabeth Klingner, a Drury professor, was beginning to promote study abroad. It's kind of a new thing then. We're talking late 50s, early 60s. It was 1960, actually, when I went. And I saw the Passion Play at Elmore Miguel. That was an awesome thing. I then got a job with the Springfield school system teaching at Parkview High School. I taught French. Well, actually, I had 5 preparations my first year. And my brother was a junior, great athlete. So I never had a problem having my classes filled because there were a lot of girls who thought if they got to know me or they were a good student in my class, maybe Bill would pay attention to them. After I taught at Parkview for 3 years, I had 2 children, Beth and Pam, and I had signed a contract to go back and teach at Parkview. And Bill Everhart, who was president of Drury, called me and said, I had been president of Faculty Wives and done some kind of different things. Bill said, I want you to come and work at Drury. I want you to be in charge of alumni relations. So I told him I couldn't do that unless he would give me 9 to 3 hours and the summers off because I had 2 little girls. And he said, sure. So I started at Drury, allegedly working that schedule. I soon realized there was no way I could do my job with those hours and summers off. So it became a major full-time job. That was in 1974. I was given, a couple of years later, I was given development and alumni relations. And in 1979, I became the first woman vice president at Drury, which at that time was a major deal. A woman vice president? I recall one time when I was giving a report to the board and the chairman of the board, when I finished, the chairman of the board said, man, doesn't Judy do a great job? She's a woman. And it just shows that in those years, it was the white male who dominated. And I was very, very fortunate that I didn't really think of myself as different from a guy. I just saw the job and went after it. So I was married to Ted Nickel, who was a math professor. And Ted and I divorced in 1980. And I then married John Martin, well, not immediately, but several years later, 7 years later. John Martin, who was an attorney, he was a Drury alum. Also, Ted was a Drury alum. I've jokingly said I would never be married to anyone who wasn't a Drury alum. John had cancer after several years of marriage and ended up dying of, complications of the cancer. He had a partial laryngectomy. First, he had radiation, and he had a partial laryngectomy. He never could eat after that. He had a feeding tube. And then I was asking another Drury alum for money when I was working on the science building at Drury. And his wife had just passed away a little bit before that. And it ended up, Bob lived in Tulsa. He was with BP also, or Amoco also, as my dad was. Bob and I ended up getting married. Well, here, I'll tell you a cute story. He was a pilot. His area of expertise, he was a chemist. He was a PhD in chemistry. And he had been a private pilot all of his life. He loved flying. So he flew over one weekend and we were having lunch and he said, well, what are you looking for? And I said, well, I'm not looking. He said, well, but if you would get married again, what would you want in a husband? I said, well, number 1, a believer, a Christian. Number 2, very smart. Number 3, a good sense of humor. Number 4, a good dancer. He said, well, I'm a Christian. I have a PhD, so maybe I'm smart enough for you. And he said that a little sarcastically. You've been around me a little bit, so you kind of know my sense of humor. Why don't we dance? And I had a lot of wooden floor in that house. And so we put on some music and we danced around my family room and breakfast room. He said, well, how am I doing? I said, you're terrible. He said, I'd take lessons. I said, you'd have to. Isn't that awful? So we got married and had a lot of fun, a lot of travel, wonderful marriage. But Bob had strokes, we think. Light ones, and then maybe a more massive stroke. But he passed away 9 years ago in September. And I've been very blessed. I mean, I've had 3 really great husbands, all Drury alums, all smart. At my stage of life, I'm really not interested in developing into a 4th marriage. Although I have a couple of male friends that I do things with. But my career at Drury, I retired the first time after about 32 years. Then I was called back and I worked again, retired. I've retired from Drury 5 times. Most recently, I was asked to come back in 2016 for just a few months. And Bob at that point he needed somebody with him. And I said, so we had a little conference about me going back. I said, you'd have to have a person at the house. We'd have to have a caregiver, which he did not want. And he said, well, for Drury, I will do this. So I went back for a few months, and of course, then he passed away right quickly after that, several months. But it ended up not being a few months. It ended up being 8 years. I ran back running advancement. And then I was on a team to talk with John Berline about being interim president after Tim Cloyd left. And John called me the next day and he said, well, I said yes, so you have to say yes. You have to come back and help me. So I had my most recent retirement about not quite 2 years ago, year and a half ago. That was it. That was my last final retirement from Drury. I'm 85 years old, so I'm not going back anymore. But I am helping a little bit with some contacts that dear friends that I've had, and whatever I can do to help the current staff. So that's maybe more than you wanted, but that's kind of the story of my life. My personal life, I have 2 precious daughters who live in Springfield. Neither one are married. Beth is a teacher. Pam is a therapist. I see them all the time. We walk. We do things together. And feel blessed that I've had all the wonderful friends, the people I met from my job at Drury, I never, ever would have known any other way. And what a blessing they've been in my life.
How have the people that you've met been a blessing? Like maybe there's
inspiration.
Maybe there's a couple of stories.
I became Frank Ross, who was actually was kicked out of Drury when he went to Drury. Became almost like a second dad to me in many ways. He lived in California, in Santa Barbara, Montecito, actually. And Frank was just a mentor to me, wonderful man, precious, always gave me good advice. He gave me a lot of advice. And So, people who became mentors. Mary Jane Poole is another one. She was a Drury alum who became editor of Vogue. Drury's had some fabulous alums who have done unbelievably great things and interesting things. Mary Jane and I became very close. And, as a woman, well, actually, there were 3 women that I had as mentors. Mary Jane was one, editor of Vogue. Betty Cole Dukert, who was the first woman who produced a television show. She produced Meet the Press. First woman of any NBC, ABC, any channel. And Carol Loomis, who was an editor of Fortune. Carol and Mary Jane and Betty were all dear, 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 precious friends to me and great mentors because they were pioneers. I mean, Carol's the only one who's still alive, and she's probably 96, about 96.
Mm-hmm.
So older, at least 10 years, the group is older.
Were they in their spots prior to you becoming like vice president?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In every case. I brought Mary Jane, Betty, and tried to get Carol to be jury trustees, to bring some women on the board.
Mm-hmm.
We needed women. Now we have many women on the board, but at those days, no. It was, mainly men. But they served for many years as trustees of jury.
I'd like to come back to your professional work a little bit, but for a few minutes, I wonder if we can go back to your young days, some of your childhood days. Because one of the things that you've brought up a little bit, and I've learned this from talking with other women, was that there was a time when women didn't have athletics in high school. They didn't have sports weren't around for women.
That's the way I grew up.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no experience. We had PE, of course, but no, we didn't have basketball. We didn't have volleyball. We didn't have any of the sports, track. I mean, it was a men's world in terms of athletics.
So what'd you do for fun?
Well, when I grew up, we didn't have all this electronic stuff.
Sure, yeah.
So we played. We played outside. And we had fun. We pretended, My dearest friend, Nan's birthday is in September. Mine is in November. So she was that much older than I, a couple months. And Nan and my brother, little Bill, 5 years younger, and I would play cowboys. And, we pretended. Our minds were exploring all kinds of things that we could pretend. Then, as I was in school, I was interested in drama. I did a lot of, and singing. I did a lot of, operettas, plays at school. I debated. Actually, I was not a very good debater, but I did extemp and I did contemporary reading, I think it was called. You memorize something, and it was a little sort of drama, but not quite acting. Sure. So I was in lots of productions and just dated, had fun with boys. I love to dance. I've always loved to dance. So I went to as many dances as possible. And
what did you think your adult life would be like when you were in that stage of life?
I knew I wanted to do something to achieve. But I didn't think about it too much. I just took each section, when I taught French, we had French. I had a French play that all the kids were in. I had a French it was a Mardi Gras, and we had to speak French that night. I mean, I always tried to make things better, more exciting, more, if you could, what could we do to make this really special? And, I, as a child, I never really thought about what I would do. It just all happened.
One of the things you said about your dad was that when he got the job in St. Louis, that he didn't want you all to come to
the wicked city.
The wicked city. Yeah. So it tells me a little bit that there was a sense of faith formation happening, or at least an awareness of one or both. Like, one question would be like, what provoked your dad to think of St. Louis as the wicked city? And then the other question.
It was just big, I think, It was, and I mean, I'm sort of joking a little bit about the wicked city, but
it's kind of
my dad was a leader at First Baptist Church.
Okay.
Daddy was chairman of the deacons, chairman of trustees, and any leadership was definitely a part of his life. And actually, one of my husbands, John Martin, said, "You've never been in an organization you haven't been president of," and that's about the truth. It's a big part of my life too. I'm very much like my dad in that regard. And church was very important to Daddy and Mother, but I learned from them, support of church and how important church was in our home life, in our lives. I was in a group at First Baptist Church that we still get together. Not many of us left. Whoever is left, we get together once a year. We try to. I became a believer, a Christian, when I was 9. Dr. Fred C. Easton was our minister. And actually, Daddy had been chairman of the committee to bring a new pastor, the pastor search committee. And Dr. Easton spoke at Vacation Bible School. The older kids stayed, the younger kids went off and, had something else to do, recess maybe. But Dr. Easton pulled a chair on the platform, and he said, "This is a chair. I believe this is a chair. I would stake my life that this is a chair. But until I sit in that chair and take my feet off the ground, I haven't put my faith in the chair." That's what it means to believe in Jesus. Well, as a little 9-year-old, that chair story spoke to me. And I believed, and I gave my heart to the Lord at 9. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't strayed at times, and many other things have become important. But I've never doubted my faith in the Lord. And I just credit that little story about the chair and sitting in the chair and taking your feet off the ground. It's faith.
Have you found that story and that metaphor, but very real metaphor, showing back up in your life throughout different moments?
Well, I've used it sometimes in sharing my faith.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been through a lot. 2 husbands who died, a divorce. The Lord's always with me. I mean, I said, and I do BSF, I have said several times to BSF groups, how lucky we are to believe. Not everybody can. Not everybody does. I mean, they could, but they don't get the opportunity to. How lucky we are to believe and know Jesus as our Savior. I mean, to me, that's just a fabulous gift. And certainly not something, I conjured up. Fred Easton did.
Yeah. Did you reflect on the life of your parents and the contribution that they made to your life? You mentioned your dad, that you really took on that leadership mantle that he reflected. You find another major contribution from your mom over the course of your life?
Caring about people. My mother had been very ill. And I don't know if you remember, but a long time ago, grocery stores used to give, if you spent $10, you got a plate of, or whatever they were giving that week, a cup and saucer of a certain pattern of dishes. So I did the shopping for Mother once I could drive, because she couldn't drive anymore. So she would go to this store and spend whatever the minimum was and get these things, these items, and get the plate or the cup and saucer or whatever they were giving that week. Go to this store and do, So I would sometimes have to go to 3 and 4 stores. But what she did with those is collect them. And we had a basement in our house. It was not a finished basement. It was a basement. And she had cabinets built. And she had sets of dishes that she was collecting from all these grocery stores. And in case somebody had a fire or in case something happened, she would have a set of dishes to take them. I mean, my mom was a person who cared deeply about other people and trying to do things for them in simple ways that she could. But a new set of dishes, if you'd had a fire or, some kind of a catastrophe, meant a lot.
It does. And that's I was just thinking about how often, or actually not very often at all, do we hear about fires and people having fires these days.
It was more often then.
Yeah. A lot of the codes that have been put in place.
And we have
those.
Detectors, smoke detectors.
Smoke detector, everything else. So many things. Advances that we're recipients of, we forget about. Some of us do. Your brother, you talked with great affection about him. Over the course of those your 85 years, his 80, you have some profound memories of and relationships change too over as you get older and you grow up, and some memories of things that are really precious and dear.
Well, Bill and I, Mother's plan for Christmas was the family would be together on Christmas Eve. And then on Christmas Day, we would go to her parents and Daddy's parents. And our family time was Christmas Eve. Bill and I had every Christmas Eve of our lives together except one.
Wow.
And that was during COVID. And he was not happy about that. But his youngest son and daughter-in-law wouldn't get the COVID shot. And my oldest daughter was rabid that we were not going to be around anyone in close proximity who hadn't had a COVID shot. So we didn't have that Christmas together. But every other Christmas Eve, we were together and had a family dinner.
That's an incredible memory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was special to him. It was very special to me too. But Bill was an athlete. Well, my youngest daughter was playing basketball and volleyball at Parkview in the gym. I looked up on the wall and they had school records. My brother's track records were still up there as the school record.
That's pretty impressive.
And think how many years later that was. Yeah, he's a great athlete. And Precious, precious guy. His oldest grandson is getting married next Friday, the 15th. And I'm going to go. I wasn't going to go, but it's in Kentucky, 8-hour drive. But I'm going to go for Bill because he can't be there. And a Greer needs to be there.
So your girls were born to a mom that had a career, and you managed having, those two things, being a mom, having a career. What was that like? Because there weren't necessarily a lot of people before you who had done the same kind of work.
No, and I had to travel quite a bit to see alums and have events and talk to foundations and donors. It was a challenge, a major challenge. But I was able to get some help, and their dad also was very helpful. And, it was a constant balancing act. And you'd have to ask them, okay, did we suffer? Probably they'd tell you yes. Oh, yes, we did. But
well, somebody told me that most Sundays you go walking with your girls.
I do.
Yeah. So that relationship, that bond is strong.
Actually, this Sunday we went down to Big Cedar and met my stepdaughter, Bob's daughter, who has a house at the lake, and had lunch. So we didn't walk. We probably should have when we got back, but we didn't. But yes, every Saturday and Sunday we try to walk. Sometimes Beth is out of town, sometimes Pam is, but that's our goal is to walk every Saturday and Sunday together and talk.
What do you talk about?
Everything, what's going on in my life, what's going on in their lives, and just everything.
When you were talking about going into development, I was reminded of a couple of different pieces of writing from Henry Nouwen that I've read. One of his pieces is around the aspect of fundraising, which obviously development is fundraising. And another was a sabbatical year he took, where he talked about his relationship with Joan, which would be Joan Kroc, who was of the McDonald's family, or they owned McDonald's. And he said a lot of interesting things around development work and what you were in, but he talked about the need for friendship that is in those spaces, and how Joan reflected that was one of the things she really lacked for in life, was a friend, a true friend. And I just wondered how you reflected on the significance of friendship, or if you've seen that at all in your work.
Oh, yes. I mean, as I told you earlier, Frank Ross, Mary J. Poole, Betty Duker, all dear friends. One of the honors that I've had in my career, I mean, I've asked people to give their entire estates to Drury, or a major portion of their estate. But I've been asked to speak at funeral after funeral after funeral. And I have said it wasn't about the money that they gave Drury, although that was really important for Drury, obviously. But that relationship that we had, that I was important enough in their life that they asked me to speak at their service. And that was a true honor in every case.
Yeah, that's a high honor. That's incredible. And one of the questions when you were talking about in development, one of the questions that popped up in my mind is, what's some advice you'd give to people who are working in that space today? I've got a dear friend that I was able to do a wedding, be a part of his wedding, and years ago, he's doing a bang up job in another university. But I wonder, what kinds of advice would you give to somebody who's in the field of development?
really care. Really care about the people. And never, ever, ever do anything that would compromise their life. I've had people, I could manipulate little old ladies like I am now. You never, ever do anything that isn't in the best interest of the person. And as I said, trust. Establish that trust and be honest with the person with whom you're dealing. Caring about them is essential, I think. And also having joy. I think, that's one of the things that, you talked about this gentleman who didn't really have any friends. He was very wealthy, but he had no friends, very few. Probably suspected that some of the people around him were his friends because he was rich. And if you can establish a relationship on a level that you convince the person that you're not being their friend, you're not talking to them because they've got so much money, you really care about them. That is, to me, the most important thing. And it's honest. If you can really. And fortunately, I love people. So it's not hard for me to do that, to try to convey to them, that I really care about them. And I've had people tell me no, but I've still cared about them and loved them, and they've been my friends. But for whatever reason, it just wasn't the right thing for them to give Drury whatever I was asking for.
Yeah.
I've asked for a lot of money that I didn't get. You have to learn to accept no and figure out, is there a way to turn no into a yes and appropriately turn it into a yes?
Some really good advice I got a couple years ago. Somebody was, and they weren't even giving his advice. They were just talking about their own story. And they had a professor early on urge them to get to 1,000 no's. He said, because if you try to get to 1,000 no's, you'll get a lot of yeses along the way.
That's right.
Yeah. And
That's right.
All of those answers are just.
Well, when I got a no, I always tried to turn it into a yes if I could, especially if it was with like a foundation.
Sure.
We got a F.W. Olin grant, which was a big deal because they only gave to schools that were excellent. They wouldn't give to the Harvards, the Yales, because they had arrived. They had the huge endowments, but they gave to the next level of colleges. And the first year we approached them and talked to them, no. Second year. And I would always call them back and say, what is it that you are looking for that you don't see at Drury, that we haven't provided for you? And they would tell me. And so I get busy and try to fix that at Drury. And the third year, no. Fourth year, we were a finalist. They picked 4 finalists to give 2 buildings. And they give a complete building, everything.
Wow.
Everything that's in it, all the furniture, the carpeting, everything. And they came, they interviewed us. No. So I called Larry Milas and I said, all right, what is it that you're not seeing at Drury? He said, well, we really didn't see urgency. What? I failed. And we needed the new library because we were trying to get accreditation for the new architecture school. And to be accredited, you had to have so many volumes for your architecture students, and we didn't have room. And so we needed the space. And And Larry said, but I just want to tell you, Judy, that you can only be a finalist twice. So you might want to think about, do you want to fly again next year? And I thought, I didn't say to him, but I thought, if I don't apply, what does that show about urgency? No way I'm applying next year. And so they meet with trustees, they meet with students, they meet with professors. I sat with every group and drilled them on what to say. So we had the trustees. John Q had just built his new Highland Springs.
Okay.
So we had our trustee meeting out at his new country club. And there were about 6 trustees around the table. We had dinner. And I had met with each one of them and told them what I wanted them to say. So they asked John to be, we're in your country club, so why don't you talk to us first? So John gave the little talk very nicely that I had rehearsed with him. Then he looks at me and said, now, did I say that the way you wanted me to say it, Judy? But John Moore and I were in St. Louis making a presentation for our new architecture school with the firm. And we came back, drove back to Springfield, and John went by his office and found a note from his secretary. It was about 6:37 at night that Larry Milas had tried to call him. And so John returned the call, found out some way, I don't remember exactly how, his home phone, and called him at home. And we were a finalist. We won. And he called me. I was down. I had a cabin. John and I had a cabin at Linden. And he called me about 12 o'clock at night and said, we got it. I never went to bed that night. I was so excited because getting an F.W. Olin grant was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
John Moore used to say it was like the good housekeeping seal of approval on a college. I mean, people knew that if you got an Olin grant, you were good academically, you were good financially, you had great trustees, you had support. And the interesting thing that happened after that, though, is that I started getting a lot of job offers. I guess I thought, if she can get it for Drury, then, let's hire her because we want an Olin building. But that was an example to tell you of how you don't ever really take no for an answer. You figure out, okay, what is it that person or that entity, that foundation, that company is not seeing that they need to see?
Yeah.
And most people will tell you. It's interesting.
It is. When you think about the future,
my future or
your future, and maybe 2 questions. So you've got an interesting insight. You've retired 6 times, and they keep asking you to come 5 times. They keep asking you to come back. So maybe you'll have
They're not going to ask me anymore.
You never know.
Too old.
So, what are you anticipating for the future of, higher ed or college life?
I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very concerned about private higher education. I think there are a lot of small private institutions that just are not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
I pray and hope Drury is not one of them, that they make it great. But there are some really good small private schools that won't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's expensive. It's really expensive. Education's not cheap. And tuition's getting higher and higher. I mean, even for public schools, it's getting higher and higher. And, I've never worked at MSU. It used to be SMS. I keep wanting to call it SMS. But, they have to raise money. They don't get all the support from the state.
Right.
And So it's just an expensive thing, and there's a limit to what people can pay for that education. And so I think we're going to see a lot of schools failing. I think it's an exciting time. To be in the classroom and know that you're training, working, helping kids that are going to go and be the world's leaders. They're going to be the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers. Education is exciting, but it's expensive.
It is.
And I think there's going to be a point at which, and we're already seeing it to some degree. I mean, there are schools that are beginning to fail. Well, they are failing.
How about for yourself? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I thank the Lord every day that I have health, pretty good health. I'm going to have carpal tunnel surgery in about 3 weeks. But I am blessed. So I do want to get more involved with our church. Probably, I believe in prayer. I believe God answers prayer. I would pray with people who are ill. I do. I have a long list of people I'm praying for. As I get older and my friends get older, that list gets longer. So a service to people. I love BSF. It's a wonderful Bible study. I'll continue to do that. I'm president of the Gynecological Cancer Board, and I will be involved with that. I've personally had breast cancer. I sailed through it. But gynecological cancer tends to come back and back and back. And as being a survivor of gynecological cancer is wonderful, because a lot aren't. So I'll be involved in charity. I for 25 years, I was president of the Hospice Foundation. I believe in that strongly. But of service in work, play bridge, play mahjong. I play in 3 mahjong groups.
I have no idea what that game is.
It's a great game for your mind.
Okay.
And you need to keep doing things that are good for your mind.
I know. That's important. Do you play any pickleball?
No.
Okay.
I've never played pickleball. I used to play tennis, but I don't play anymore.
I've been inspired by there's about 3 pickleball players over here. 2 of them are 79.
That's great.
And one of them's 83. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
These guys are setting the bar for where I want to be someday. Yeah.
That's great.
You, couple more questions. One is, you mentioned those women who had gone before, they became like your band of mentors. Do you have some people you're a mentor for? Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that enriched your life?
Well, I just try to be available and be supportive, and let's figure out what you could do to solve this problem. And but I have several Drury alums, younger Drury alums, who tell me I'm a mentor to them. Just be there.
Yeah.
Be my friend.
One final question. Is there a piece of advice that you find yourself saying quite often? You're like, man, just reflecting on it.
Advice?
Yeah. Or maybe a word of wisdom?
Jesus. It's everything. He brings us happiness. He brings us joy. I don't know how people live if they don't have faith. I really don't. It has to be devastating because there are a lot of problems that we face in our lives. But if you have Jesus, you know that joy that is beyond understanding. I won't say supernatural, but because that gets into other things. But it's to me, that's brings us the happiness that we all seek, to have a relationship with him, personal relationship with him.
Yeah. Judy, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, a big thank you to Judy for sharing her story. In listening, I hope that you found yourself inspired, encouraged, and challenged, and that you begin to behold the really cool people who are around you each and every day. The Really Cool People podcast is produced by Schweitzer Church, Springfield, Missouri. Taylor Likes is our executive producer and editor, and I'm your host, Jason Leininger. You can help us out by liking, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. Until next time, stay cool.